Hey, Shawn G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy.
Who knows? You hear a bunch of these scary dogman encounters. We don't know what's fact from fiction. I try to decipher that as best as possible, but we all know things slip through the cracks. But I honestly do believe that Bigfoot are more aggressive and a little bit more dangerous.
Okay. Um, uh, I have kind of, with my rudimentary studies of Bigfoot and these cryptids, I've found that they're associated with burial mounds or mounds from Aboriginals throughout the northern United States and Canada. Have you seen this as well, or can you elaborate if you did?
Yes, sir. We were in a property in Oklahoma about a month ago. It's a property I've been to numerous times before. Really didn't think about it, just kind of rambled through. And on FLIR, we saw three individuals on their belly pushing themselves backwards away from us. So we slowly approached these three individuals. As we're approaching them over about a 200-yard space, they push themselves behind this thing that on FLIR, which shows body heat or heat of any kind, is glowing very, very hot red.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking like, it's a cluster of them. But when we get close, it's a heel. When we step back and look at it, it's your atypical burial mound. We just happened to stumble upon one. And we found it awful strange that these Bigfoot creatures zigzagged their way on their bellies backwards till they got to this point and then just kind of disappeared. So, and I'm like you, I've studied them, but nobody really knows what they are. People say the grave sites of giants. Who knows? But I find it very, very interesting that they, like you said, that they're associated with these burial mounds or these Indian mounds. I do think that there's a correlation there. As to what the correlation may be, I'm sure I do not know, but I'd like to find out.
Oh, I had a discussion with Linda Godfrey probably 6 months ago or something like that, and I asked her a similar question. And at that time, I was doing the deep dive into these cryptids, and I started making associations. And I had two or three maps of ley lines for the United States and North America. Had a map of all the mounds, and had a map of cryptid sightings and also UFO sightings. UFO sightings, and they all kind of correlated with each other. You could lay one on top
Isn't
of
that
it.
strange?
Yeah, that's strange. You could lay one map down and lay the other map on top of it, and lay the other map on top of it. Obviously, you have these stragglers sightings and disassociated with everything, but they all kind of group together. Do you have any opinion on that?
I did the same type of research you did, and I've came to the same conclusion. And you may have heard me say before that I really do believe that all this stuff is linked, maybe on a microscopic level. But I'm like you, I find it awful strange that UFO, all this anomalous stuff, UFOs, dogmen, Bigfoot, ghosts, and the ley lines seem to be the veins that connect all of it. It's very hard to find accurate ley line maps, but if you do, it boggles my mind. And where the ley lines cross, a lot of people think that there's some sort of a megalith or some sort of a distinct marker where these ley lines cross. Well, that's not necessarily so. Sometimes it's in the middle of the woods. But when you go and you look at what's taking place in these woods, you'll find some fascinating things.
Mm-hmm. So what is your speculation that these ley lines and all these UFOs? What is it that's coalescing? That you mentioned veins. I'll borrow that term. What's in these veins that's keeping these paranormal to group all those things that we just discussed together? What is it? What is it that's attracting them? Is it the magnetic earth lines or what have you? What is it?
I think you said it right there. Personally, I think it's a perfect storm of many different things, but at the most, it's a perfect storm of electromagnetic currents. What people report in the woods that coincide with not only Bigfoot encounters, but UFOs and other things is the popping and ringing of the ears, not being able to really think straight. That all coincides with a heavy burst of electromagnetic currents. That's what I believe them to be. With the Leyland's cross, science says that there's gravitational anomalies. That just, translates to folks like us that there's weird stuff taking place there. So I honestly believe that it has to do with the vibrations, electromagnetic currents, and to a certain extent, light. And the reason I say light is because if you look at Dogman, Bigfoot, or UFO encounters, the majority of them all happen as the sun's coming up, and as the sun's going down. And I don't know why that is.
Well, that kind of there's a thing that ham radio operators experience. It's called what was it? Propagation of the wave, where they can when the sun sets or the sun rises, they'll be able to reach longer distances. So there's a lot of energy that is present during that. So I kind of agree with you on that, Dee. I really do. So these dogmen and these cryptids, specifically, then we'll pop off on another tangent, depending on how you feel here in just a little bit. How do they communicate? Is it more of a clicking, barking, kind of growl thing, or is there some other form of communication like telepathy or something else that you've noticed? Do they have a rudimentary language that they can write in? What's your...
Well, the woman in Arkansas was the only case I've ever heard where they used writing. She put out her daughter was a year old when they showed up on the property. I believe she'd be 16 or 17 now, but she would put out her schoolwork. Like, as she was getting older, she'd put out old coloring books, ABCs and things of that nature. And puzzles. The puzzles is what got me. She said that they are up to being able to piece together 100-piece puzzle.
Oh,
now, that shows a lot. Yeah, it baffled me when I talked to this woman. And if I hadn't talked to her on the phone, I wouldn't have believed her. I would have written it off as a joke. But the emotion in her voice, especially when she saw this, what I call the unnatural creature, come up to her porch, and later on that night, we believe be killed by these natural creatures. But as far as an overall language, I believe that they use a lot of nonverbal language. I believe that's what these glyphs and these structures are. They're nonverbal forms of communication between them. But we also have what they call samurai chatter, the weird type of deep guttural language that they speak amongst themselves. So I believe that they use varying different types of languages. I really do.
Oh, jeez. With these,
or not languages, forms of communication. I'm sorry.
All right. With these unnatural creatures that we've touched on, has anybody used prayer against these creatures? Or some sort of religious ceremony or prayer to God or anything like that? Has this even struck a nerve with you?
Yes, these. You're right, and I'm a born again believer in Christ and a Christian. What I heard one case where someone saw something similar to the lady in Arkansas and rebuked it in Jesus' name and pled Jesus' blood against it, and it kind of did this supernatural running through it ran away from her, but she said it ran like it was in fast forward, like it was defying time and space. It ran back into the deep brush. And I found that to be fascinating because let's go try that against the grizzly bear. Although it may work, you would assume that it'd be unlikely. Or the gentleman who jumped down into the lion's cage. You remember that? And he had a Bible and he was trying to convert whatever he was doing. A lion still attacked him. Didn't kill him, but it attacked him.
All right.
So I find it crazy, if these, especially what we call these unnatural creatures, are fleeing as they're being rebuked in the name of Jesus. So
that's well, I have heard that before. It's rare that people actually talk about using the power of Christ to help with these situations where they're confronted with these unnatural creatures that you just mentioned. Going back to, I've got one more question concerning, these cryptids, Dogman, what have you, Bigfoot.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever found any burial remains or remains of a dead creature like that?
No, sir, I haven't. I think the whole world would know if I did. I try to find a way to broadcast it, but no, I've never found any bones. The closest thing I've come to find any kind of remains is finding scat, which
Have,
that wasn't too pleasant. I didn't take any samples, believe
oh,
me.
okay, okay. Well, I was about ready to ask. I said, did you did you send that off to a lab somewhere? So, did you do any field investigation, like poke it with a stick and see if there was any kind of berry remains inside of the scat or anything like that?
No, it smelled so horrendous, and I mean, it looked like human beings scat, but tremendously bigger. And it was in a nesting area, so we had activity going on around us at the time. I just found it fascinating because I'd never seen it before. But going back, honestly, I would have bit the bullet, and I probably would have taken it because there could be DNA evidence and fecal matter and stuff like that. I've been told, so
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe I would have considered it because Shawn, it stunk to all be damned. I can tell you that much.
Well, I have been around some crazy smells working in the hospital, so I can only imagine what you went through with that. Okay, let's switch up a little bit if you got a few more minutes on you.
Sure thing.
Okay, I know that you've researched some giants, and we've discussed all these ley lines and mounds and Aboriginal connection with all these paranormal happenings. Have you come across any kind of correlation with the giants of old that the Aboriginals talk about? I've heard several Aboriginal elders, and one particular that lives up in Arizona. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he discussed about a lot of folklore or tribal lore about giants and Bigfoot and Dogman, and they were all coalescing in this, basically the same vein with their belief systems. Have you correlated that with giants and these Bigfoot and Dogmen and whatnot?
No, I haven't. The only correlation that I could find is the hypothesis that at the same time the giants were wandering the earth, and it goes back to Genesis 6, the sons of God came unto the daughters of men and saw that they were fair and took of them wives, whom which they choose. It also talks about how everything in creation had been corrupted by these fallen angels, even the grass of the field. If you read the book of Jasher in the first book of Enoch, it talks about it goes in a little bit more detail on how these things were corrupted, mixing animals with men and stuff like that. That's the only correlation. And I mean, that's just a hypothesis, that's just me throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. But as far as any kind of evidence or anything of that nature, no. The only evidence I can find that they are some sort of natural creature.
Mm-hmm. Wow. When you come across these unnatural, sort of what you described to me as demonic kind of looking things, is there any correlation with the environment they're in, or is it like like you hear in the Catholic faith, probably a possession type deal? What's your opinion on that?
It goes all the way back to that's a good question too. It goes back to the unnatural creatures being some sort of, and this is my opinion. I don't know for a fact, mind you, but them being something more than. Okay, I'll put it this way. I grew up in Oklahoma. There's a lot of Native American tribes there.
Mm-hmm.
They say that some of these beings can be conjured up, and some human beings can have some certain things done to themselves, or they can do certain things to change into some type of other creature, like a fox or a bird. But these creatures would be unnatural because God, the Creator, only creates things perfectly, so they'd be imperfect. As far as that goes, like quite possibly, let's see. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Somebody came in the room.
That's a cool thing about podcasts. You can edit that out.
Yeah, awesome. The unnatural creatures. How about I'm sorry. Could you ask me that question again?
Okay,
They
and
just
that,
completely threw me off.
the unnatural part, separating the Bigfoot and the Dogman that are basically a natural thing where you can interact
Right.
with them, and then you get this pus covered demonic whatever the hell it looks like, smelling like
Yeah.
sulfur.
Sulfur smell.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
that type of creature. Uh, is it more of a demonic, unholy, bad spirit, or to borrow a term from the Aboriginals, evil spirits kind of deal, or is it something else? Is it out of this world? Obviously, I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I believe. I have two answers for that. I believe that some are these man-made beasts that are made in these deep underground military bases that they call dumbs. The average is there's two per landlocked state in the United States. There's two of these dumbs, these deep underground military bases, where they have these black budgets and they're conducting all these strange experiments. I believe that could be one of the causalities of people seeing these creatures. And two, like you just said, I think it's good old fashioned wickedness, just like medieval Europe, um, just like the ancient Native American shamans and medicine men would do these weird satanic type experiments and rituals to transform themselves or to conjure up these ungodly creatures. I believe those two are the answers to that. And there seems to always be a feeling that comes along with it. The feeling that people get when they run into these natural dog band creatures and Bigfoot is this just intimidation. This I'm very small and this thing's very big and it could kill me at any time. That's much like what a rabbit would feel up against a wolf. But this other stuff, people say they have nightmares afterwards. Their houses are haunted. So it's not just them experiencing this stuff in the deep forest. It follows them home. The experience is prolonged, and I believe it to be a wicked thing.
That we've discussed individuals, except for the couple with Mr. Preston that we discussed earlier. There was a couple there that witnessed this creature or whatever it was. Have you had the occasion to come across anybody that had more than one witness to these unholy or unnatural creatures?
Yes, the Preston family that we're doing the investigation with now, like you said, the family in Arkansas, which I didn't delve too deep into that one. That one was a little bit out of my league at the time. I just started, and they throw this big, heaviness onto my lap with all this madness taking place out there. But there's several other occasions where there's more than one witness. Kirk Stokes, he's retired now, but he's a dogman investigator up in Daniel Boone. He'd always be more than happy to carry people out with him. And they'd have the same experiences he did with these dogman and werewolf type creatures. Um, Going into Brown Springs, I think there's only a couple of incidents where it was only myself present. Uh, but those are the ones we like to look for, with the ones with multiple people present while they have these experiences.
Now, I've had a lot of contact with a mutual friend of ours, James Dark Waters. He's told
Yes,
I
sir.
haven't I've not had this experience, and nobody's told me this other than what James has shared with me. That these dogmen have appeared in bedrooms, and they've used the name of Jesus Christ to what could you say? Just in the name of Jesus Christ, use the blood of Christ and
Rebuke.
rebuke him. Yeah, that's the
Right.
word I was searching for. Thank you.
No problem.
Have you heard stories similar to that?
Yes, I have, and I believe those to be attributed to, like I say, these unnatural type of creatures. These these ones through whether it be some sort of satanic ritual or some sort of a bloodletting ritual or something like that. They're not born of a creature of their own, after their own kind. They seem to be unnatural, and like you were saying, they always come along with some sort of smell or nightmares, and like James was talking about, how you people have not have nightmares and then they see them inside their homes. Those aren't natural dogmen. Those aren't dogmen whatsoever. I believe that they are demonic beings that are manifesting themselves to what people fear. you know um they're always going to try to get you as scared as possible, because when you're scared, you're vulnerable.
With your encounters with all these dogmen and cryptid creatures and Bigfoot and whatnot, have you ever come in contact with these area Indian tribes, Aboriginals, if you will, and what kind of stories did you get from them?
No, I actually, the only time I've ever encountered any kind of Native American tribes when I was a younger man growing up in Oklahoma. And they told me the stories of the stuff that I'm encountering now, but I didn't really put too much stock into it. You know what I mean? Being a young man, I thought they were fables, folklore, and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that fascinated me the most, my one of my best friends in the world, his name's Jason Ned. His great uncle is called Oklahoma's last great medicine man. His name was Buster Ned, and he, there's books written about him, songs written about him, and he talks about the little people. Well, we went on his property, and this is going way back when I was 16 years old, and there was about 7 of us there. 5 of us went into this cabin where there were these fruit jars and half-gallon jugs, and they're the old glass jugs of I don't know what type of liquid it was. Who knows? But they were supposed to be stuff that he used for his medicines. Well, when we left out of this cabin, I was the first one out. And we're all piled up onto the porch, and I see this armadillo, and that's what made me stop, because this armadillo looked like it was as big as a Rottweiler. It was going through this high grass because it was unmaintained land. Nobody wanted this land. It got passed down to my friend, who's, that's his great uncle who lived there. And this armadillo stood up, and it looked like his head had fell back like a hoodie, and you could see a humanoid head standing and staring at us. And it was at night, but you could see what was there. Then it turned back around, dropped back on all fours, and left. Well, that was supposedly one of the little people, because all these medicine men are assigned or take on one of the little people to help them in their magic. But as far as the old Native American or Aborigine tales, that's the only one I've experienced that I know of.
Now the little people, the cryptid little people, that's a rabbit hole I jumped down several times, and I come back up with, you don't want to meet one, and you don't want to make a deal with one.
No, yeah, you don't want, you just, what I suggest to the listeners is, if you live in the areas where they say little people are, leave them be. If you see them, act like you don't see them, because I believe they to be some sort of a spirit being too, but they can cause legitimate real world problems for you.
Now there's this one, I had a really long, over a couple of weeks, even a month long discourse with a Native American, or not a Native American, a Aboriginal from Canada, that discussed about little people, that there was this one reservation, which I can't say other than it's in Canada, that this reservation he referred to as a really evil reservation, that these little people would adopt or pick these little kids, and they would tag them with these special kind of braids in their hair, and that meant that they were theirs, kind of deal. And he even referenced a story that came across as a family that had a small child that was tagged with one of these special braids, left the reservation, or tried to leave the reservation. As they were leaving, they had a car accident, and everyone in that, not everyone, that child in the car accident perished. Have you ever heard anything like that?
No, not like that, but similar. As far as the medicine men go, like the medicine men families were almost betrothed to these little people until they got done being the medicine men for the tribe. I've heard that before, but I didn't know there were such severe consequences for trying to, renege on that contract, or however you would call it.
Well, the contract itself, I don't think he didn't delve into the backstory, other than these children were tagged with these special kind of hair braids that was related to being part of the little people's possession, kind of deal. The next time I talk to him, I'll have to ask him about that again. He may be with some. If I can get him to talk to anybody, I'll tell you, he's rarely talked to anybody that's in the podcast world. But that being said, this is your show, not mine. Let's get back to some of the research that you've been doing. What other avenues have you researched in the paranormal or I know you're a follower of Christ. What have you kind of researched that would blow other people's minds if they knew it?
Oh wow, that's a good question. The Bigfoot and Dogman stuff, I think is the most mind blowing to me because it seems like everything just is interwoven through that. You know, with the Bigfoot and Dogman stuff, I've seen a UFO in the same area that I do my research. Um, there's been ghost sightings in the same area. It seems like if you study one, you'll eventually run into the other.
Um, have you ever
That's
come?
been the most fascinating thing.
Well, have you seen ghosts? You've seen UFOs. Have you seen ghosts before? Or are they associated with these areas where you do research, or has it been disassociated with it?
No, it's very, very much associated with these areas. But I've not seen them personally, and I don't really want to. Um, that's not really my thing. I don't like messing with that stuff, and it has far more reaching consequences than when you're in that area. You know, like my mom's from Arkansas, my dad's from Texas. They call them haints in some parts of the United States. They can attach themselves to you or follow you home and all that stuff, and that's just problems I don't need. So when I go out, I have a mindset that I don't want to mess with any of that stuff. A lot of people, and you've heard the old saying, "Be careful what you wish for." I think that's what's going on with a lot of people who delve into, especially the
Cult.
poltergeist and ghost, yeah, the cult, occult investigations, poltergeist and ghost expeditions and investigations. They find what they're looking for. Either that or they find a demon that's manifesting itself to be what they're looking for. So I try to be very, very careful with that. Prayed up and paid up.
Yeah,
And
I'm assuming you take a Bible with you on these
no,
investigations.
I have one on my phone, but I always pray before, during, and after.
You're awesome, awesome. In these investigations that you do, have you ever come across occult activity in those areas?
That's interesting. We've actually found pentagrams that were carved into trees that weren't there prior, stuff like that. But we've never actually ran into them being there performing these rituals. But the area is very, very known for satanic rituals, and witches go out there and sacrifice dogs and do everything, stuff like that. But I've not personally got to run into it. Not got to, like it's a privilege or anything, but no, I've not ran into anything like that. I'm thankful for it.
Do you carry any personal protection as you go out on these investigations?
I don't carry firearms because I don't. The areas I go to are heavily inundated with Squatch, and I think that would cause more problems than it would solve. They know what guns are. They can smell gun oil and gunpowder. So the areas I go to, just because they're so active, I don't really carry firearms. Other places I do that I'm not familiar with, but and it's primarily for stuff like that. If I go by myself and walk upon some sort of a crazy Luciferian ritual, it wouldn't mean them no never minds to add me to it. You know what I mean? Add me to that little bonfire that they're making. So yeah, I'll carry guns in areas that I'm not familiar with. But as far as my main research areas, or if I'm called to someone's property, I'll ask. Either that, or I have a couple of people on my team that are ex-military that they always carry, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll make sure that they, the property owner knows that they're going to be carrying a firearm if it's okay.
Okay. For D, you've heard of the missing cases, the 411 cases, correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you correlated any of these missing or researched any missing people in that particular area where you come across Bigfoot or Dogmen or what have you?
Yes, there was only one case, and we actually found out the guy was alive and well. It was on the Texas side, across from my Oklahoma investigation area. He had built this elaborate tree house. When I was first told about it, they called it a tree stand. It was actually a tree house. Um, he gets run off this place, or we thought he was killed, basically, because it was a 3 mile hike before we even got to where this tree house was, through wild country. But we weren't thinking about him coming up on the river, which would only be 100 yards away from this tree house that he built. Another hunter said that he got a hold of this gentleman after the fact. And he said that, as he's building this tree house, he went and set up his cameras. The second day, he kind of stalked around, set up more cameras, looked for sign, and on that night, he started to stalk hunt. Well, after he, went stalk hunting, didn't bag anything, went back to the treehouse, heard the ground rumbling, looked through the openings of this treehouse because he used baling wire and everything natural, just wood that he found in the forest.
Mhm.
He looked through the slats in this treehouse that he had made and saw red eyes rushing towards him from three different areas. The only area they left open was the opening of the treehouse itself.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, he runs out. The only thing he took with him was his gun. He runs out, runs to his boat that's on the river, and leaves. But when I went in there, after we hiked that 3.5 miles, I thought it was dead. There'd be no way you can outrun one of these things in a 3 mile dash. But when the guy talked to him, I don't know how he found him. He told me that he promised the guy that he wouldn't tell me how he found him or who he was. But he said that these things were chasing him through this forest. And I mean, it wasn't just a clear run. There were down trees all over the place. The ground was uneven, very, very uneven. And it was almost on a peninsula looking spot on the river where it horseshoed.
Okay.
But he said that these creatures chased him out and he could feel their breath on the back of his neck.
Hey, folks, thanks for listening to this best stuff sample of some of my 5 years in doing this radio show podcast called Chasing the Truth. Please visit imdarkwaters.com, or you can email me at seang@imdarkwaters.com. And my numbers and links are in the description below. God bless y'all, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.